So if you guys have not seen this yet, Ingenturzi recently put out some footage of ERMES Gasparini and Devon LARRATT practice pulling. Now obviously these guys had a match a little while back and Devon ended up defeating ERMES pretty easily, but there's always a little bit of a difference when going up against Devon in an environment like that versus more of a practice setting. And just looking at the grip both guys are obtaining here, the knuckle height looks very similar. It looks like they both have a pretty similar grip. They both have a pretty deep grip. There's a little bit of a gap in between both pullers' hands, their pinky pad and the other guy's wrist. So it looks like they have a decently deep grip. And this is going to give them pretty decent access to their power. So upon the first go here, we see that ERMES is in total control. And what ERMES is doing here is he's not totally posting up. He's not trying to go only with that high knuckle and go over the top of Devon completely, but by dragging back and kind of pivoting, doing somewhat of a hybrid. He's not only dragging, but he's also not only pivoting, it's somewhere in the middle. He's punching that knuckle up and over the top, but also over the side of Devon's arm. And when he's doing this, he is also opening up Devon's elbow flexor angle. Now, Devon feels this initially, and they're still warming up to a certain degree, but he also decides to let this one go. He follows that pin, and ERMES feels this. So then he does a little bit of a regrip. And once again, ERMES is going to be way too much here. He is opening the elbow flexor of Devon LARRATT, and Devon is doing a pretty good job of making sure that ERMES is going to have to hold on to him, but he can't quite keep that elbow flexor angle tight enough in order to make that happen. So as Devon's knuckle height drops, now ERMES is really being able to go over the top of Devon, and he's not having to hold on as much. So holding on to your opponent in arm wrestling is more so a spectrum rather than just puller A is holding on to puller B or vice versa. So ERMES is still holding on to Devon to a certain extent, but because he's also going over the top of him to a certain extent, he's not fully holding on. He's only somewhat partially having to contain Devon's top roll here, as his elbow flexor, his side pressure are super strong, and he's being able to use that arm power to his advantage, and he's not having to hold on entirely. So one more pin for ERMES here, and this is going to continue. We see Devon trying to kind of supinate it a little bit maybe and just get a deeper grip really more than anything. He's trying to push his knuckle height up. And you can see even from this position, this is very impressive, is that ERMES is still able to go through Devon even when Devon has that super high knuckle. He's having to hold on to Devon more and more so, but he still has enough power to get through him to open up that elbow flexor. Now eventually here, and even with Devon going way off the back, ERMES is totally having to hold on. He has enough lat drag though, and he has enough elbow flexor that he's forcing Devon's knuckle height to drop, and then he's still being able to go over the top. So that's the biggest gap I'm seeing right now, is the power of ERMES' elbow flexor and Devon's elbow flexor. You can just see that ERMES' angle is so much tighter, and because he has that tighter angle, he's opening Devon's elbow flexor, and it means that even though Devon starts with his knuckle way up here, in terms of the angle, ERMES' knuckle is going to be higher by the time that they actually start going, because this elbow flexor angle is staying tighter. Now eventually he's going to get a stop here. Even one more, ERMES gets still one more with Devon way off the back of the pad. Very impressive. And you can see it's the same thing. Devon's getting a really deep grip, and it looks like you would think you would probably be able to get a stop from here with that knuckle height, but ERMES is still going through him at this point with a little bit of a cracked wrist, but he still is maintaining his ability to go over the top, go out the back. He hasn't quite gotten to the position where he's just completely holding on to Devon. He still has quite a bit of access to that insane back pressure and side pressure. Now, ERMES' elbow flexor is going to start gassing at a certain point though, and he's really going to have to start using more lat drag, and that's when things are going to get a lot worse. Notice how after all of these pins, Devon decides that he's going to really do everything that he can to push past ERMES' arm here. You can see him kind of rolling over the top of his pronator in the setup. He's supinating and he's just pushing this direction toward this door over here, or toward his pin pad. He's trying to get as deep of a grip as he possibly can. And whenever he does this, he's limiting ERMES' ability to go up and over the top. And you can see how ERMES' knuckles are pointing pretty much directly toward Devon, but Devon's knuckles are pointing almost straight up into the air. So even though Devon has the much longer arm, his knuckles are pointing straight up, which normally wouldn't be what you would expect. You would expect Devon to be low-handing, but he's just been able to get such a deep grip here. He probably wouldn't be able to get this kind of a grip in a referee's grip, but he is able to get it here in practice. And ERMES is almost able to go through there and get the pin, but he does end up having to drag so much. And notice that at this point, ERMES' elbow flexor really is starting to open up quite a bit. And that is what is causing him to lose the ability to go over the top, but he really is having to contain and having to drag a lot more so instead of going over the top, and it's forcing him to hold on much more so. So in the beginning, ERMES' elbow flexor was staying more at a 90-degree angle or even less. Now it's opening up way past that, and as soon as that happens, ERMES doesn't have near the back pressure or side pressure he had in the earlier rounds, so now Devon is able to get a stop. Now even at this point, and Devon's probably off the back of the pad here, depends on exactly how you call it, if you just say that any part of the elbow can be touching the pad, but most people would agree that this is a foul. Maybe not at the WAL, but that's a different story. So ERMES is stretched out quite a bit, and you can see he's really having to hold on. He really has lost that punching over the top high knuckle strategy, or his ability to implement that strategy, but he still has shoulder commitments. He's forced Devon outside of his shoulder. Devon is in a super open top roll in order to get this stop. And ERMES is going to start to work through this angle, and he's going to be bringing his shoulder forward at the same time. So he's kind of decreasing this angle of his elbow flexor. He's bringing his shoulder forwards, and he's able to make these adjustments and get to the position he needs. He can't quite get that press on the first one, and Devon's way off the back of the pad at this point anyway. But he drags Devon out. He gets a little bit more so behind that arm. You can see the linearity of ERMES' shoulder to elbow to hand increase, and he gets really, really behind it. And then he's able to press Devon down toward the pin pad. And then we have one more go here to look at, and it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Well, actually, ERMES gets one more pin right off the bat. And then after this, I think he's going to get a stop. Yeah, so same thing. Devon way off the back of the pad again. But, you know, Devon did a weight cut, and he also had a match. So there is some sort of power gap that he's trying to make up here. And once again, we see the same thing, that when ERMES' elbow flexor begins to open, you can just see that pressure going into ERMES' fingertips. You can see how now ERMES' knuckles are aiming at Devon's face. And part of that is due to ERMES' radial deviation or his wrist rise, but a lot of it is due to ERMES' elbow flexor angle. It is opening significantly. Now he has a really straight arm. His arm angle is a lot more similar to Devon's. And because of that, he's having to drag instead of being able to punch up and over the top. So he's lost access to his back pressure and side pressure. But we see him hitting and getting behind his arm a little bit more so on each hit. He's working, and he's bringing his shoulder into the match. And once again, ERMES' press is really, really impressive. He doesn't even have to get all that much behind it. Normally in a press, you would want to have your shoulder more this way, or you would want to have your hand in your opponent's hand more this way, more directly in front of the shoulder. But ERMES has a really strong press, even with Devon's elbow significantly off the back. He's able to press right through without too much of a problem. Now, there's quite a bit more footage on Engin Terzi's channel, so make sure to go check that out. But I did find this to be pretty cool, and we're probably going to have a ERMES Gasparini versus Michael Todd match coming up in the near future. So it was cool to see ERMES going up against a King's mover right here. He's probably not that close to peak shape at this point, but I did find it interesting that he was able to press through Devon's King's move seemingly so easily with that flop press. It looks like he has more access to the flop press than he did the last time these guys faced. And it looks like he's also been training that high knuckle ability and trying to stay really tight and getting better at dealing with people who are applying this kind of outside open top roll pressure that Devon does, and especially getting better at dealing with people that have that longer arm. So after ERMES lost to Devon, he pulled Vitaly Laletin after that, and he's been training a little bit more like Devon, where he's focusing on gaining height. So I think it's been paying off. I think that his training is working super well, and it's going to make him a lot more dangerous against anyone that has a King's move. So I'll be super excited to see ERMES go up against Michael Todd. I think that is going to happen maybe at the next East versus West. And judging by what we're seeing here, I think that has the potential to be a super, super great match. But let me know what you guys think about this. Of course, it's just practice. Devon had a match. You can't tell all that much stuff from something like this. But just in terms of the technique that we're seeing, I think that ERMES looks quite a bit better than he did in their actual match. And it looks like maybe he has figured some stuff out.